Good morning, everyone. Welcome to American Scouser's Morning Coffee or Tea with American Scouser. It's a Monday morning. Grumpy's been doing overtime the last 3-4 days. Actually, yesterday I was kind of like getting out of it finally a little bit, but now we're gonna dive right back into it, I guess. Matush is in the house. What's happened?
Not much, just trying to dive back into it all the same.
Yeah, I mean, look, we were last on air. I was last on air on Wednesday. So obviously we woke up to the news Thursday morning. The only morning I ever slept late in the last freaking God knows how long. I wake up to like a bazillion messages and stuff like that. And then I mean, I'm sure everybody knows if you're following the channel, if you've seen our posts and stuff like that, we kind of had a lot of back and forth in terms of what to do. And we decided the best is not to do anything, let everybody do their own thing and not go on air. And because the initial reaction was almost like go on air and talk about it, but we kind of like, backed away from that. I've learned a lot over the last 4 days, I guess, right? I've learned a lot about, how I deal with things. I've learned a lot about the sites. I've learned about like the community and stuff like that. It's been kind of like a weird but informative 4 days. Let's go with that.
Yeah, and I think it was so great to have the community that we've built together in the Discord be there for everyone else. I know not everyone has the ability to, in their personal lives, be able to talk to things about, be able to talk to people about things like this. Yeah. So I know like my wife has been super supportive, but she's kind of half followed the club since she's met me. That was one of our wedding vows was, she has to be as much of a fan as she can be with me. And so I know that she's been super supportive, but I know that not everyone has that. And I think it was really good to see different parts of the communities kind of be there for each other. I know that we put out a post saying, hey, if you need someone to talk to, come on in and join us. And we had like 4 or 5 people join, I think. Yeah. And it was just really nice to see that. And, everyone's going to go about it their own way, from fans to teammates to coaches to family. Everyone grieves differently. So I think a big important thing is to just make sure that you're doing it the way that's most comfortable to you.
Yeah, that was the weird thing because initially when I think it was Kazi asking because I was tagged, so I saw that message first instead of like going on air, and it was like probably doesn't feel right. Probably we should not be on air. But then I'll be honest, like once it kind of settled, dude, the worst thing is when I first woke up and saw all the messages, there were a lot of direct messages, and there were some. I have some Turkish people who I know who are Liverpool fans, like Recep in New Orleans and stuff like that, mostly in the U.S. And there were a bunch of Turkish messages saying like, condolences and stuff like that. And I swear, obviously, waking up, I'm like half awake. I was really worried something happened to my brother. And that's like was the initial like punch in the face, like when I first woke up. And then like realizing what was happening. Once I settled in, I'll be honest, I almost wanted to go on air because it felt like it would be a lot easier to go through it if we do our regular thing as we chat back and forth with people and see their comments and stuff like that, whether it's Alan or Sir Z or Tony and, like get people in there and then go back and forth, Kev. I mean, like list goes on and on and on in terms of like our regulars in the morning here. But I think we did the second best thing by bringing some of those people to Discord. It was ultimately the same thing without having to go on air.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were able to save possibly what you were not sure of what your emotions could have been once you started actually talking out loud with people, right? Because that's the other thing that I considered too was in the midst of going back and forth and all that, you can say how you might want to do something, react to something, but the moment that you're actually here and start talking, who knows what direction it could have gone in. And I think you mentioned it yesterday too in the Discord that we've seen some channels, some people unfortunately kind of take advantage of the situation. And in the back of my mind, it was always hey, that's the last thing I want people to think. Not, I mean, I know that we are very genuine people here on this channel. You know, we don't do clickbaity stuff. We try to be very intentional in what we do, and I just didn't want that to come across negatively, right? Because you just don't know. We've had some of our shorts go across the world, and people react to a 30-second clip and think that they know who that person is, and they want to destroy that person's everything about them and what they know, right? So I think that was the big thing that I wanted to make sure didn't come across. So because I know like one of our shorts went up at like 9 o'clock, right? And it's when I messaged Gally, I was like, hey, this is kind of weird right now. And of course, like you were, or 8 o'clock, I think it was. Of course, you were saying that was the one time that you slept in, and so you know, it kind of also allowed us to work through it together. Initially, I think most of the shock anyway was part of just maybe just getting away from all that. But yeah, I'm not sure where we started with that point, but this is where I ended the point.
Yeah, I mean, Tony says Discord helped me so much. Thank you, guys. I will shoot the link again if anybody wants to hop on it. I'll put it in the description as well if you want to jump on the group. I mean, the thing with the Discord was you were able to kind of like talk. It's weird because, I mean, that's what I've learned over especially like the first 2-3 days. I think, you know, like obviously we all deal with that differently. Like the first day, like you were talking about, Michelle, like Angie obviously follows the team because it's hard to be in this household and not, you know, get caught in the crossfire 24/7. But you know, follows the team, knows the players and all that kind of stuff. So, but you know, like, so she gets, but it's weird because I think it was Cersei, for example, talking about it. And I was talking about this with my brother as well. We were about to actually record the Rival Bro show for like the EPL channel. I was like, dude, yeah, there's no way I'm gonna talk anything soccer right now. But like everybody takes it differently. I think Cersei was saying like when they first heard the news, you know, his wife said, "Poor mother." Because that's, you know, that's the first thing she thinks of is a mom who lost like 2 sons and stuff. When I first said it to Angie, and then especially she had just found out that they had just gotten married, the first thing she thought of was the poor wife kind of a thing. So like we all kind of like look at it different ways, like depends on your connection to death in the past, like who you lost and stuff, like the mind goes there. Yeah, it's kind of like was like weird. It was good to have Discord in that sense because I don't know. There wasn't a lot of humor, mind you. My escape is usually humor, but I think it was a lot of distraction, or it's not even like just, I don't want to say people who get it because it's not like Angel doesn't get it, but it's having a bunch of people who get it, maybe. I don't know what it was, but it felt like, you know, you were able to kind of release it. And I didn't think about it until like, I think it was Saturday. Like, go back 4 or 5 years, right? We didn't have Discord. We had just started the channel and stuff like that. I don't know what I would personally do because, you know, Facebook groups are a shit show usually. So I don't know who I would talk to, who I would, you know, it would be more bottled up. It feels like this was a way of connecting with a bunch of people at the same time who you kind of don't know, but know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's the same thing as when we're watching the games, you know, kind of having that pub feeling of being around a bunch of people that are watching and being able to talk about the game in the chat. The same way goes for exactly what you just said. In moments like this, when something terrible happens, then having that support system, having, like you said, our partners, they understand it, but unless they've kind of lived and breathed it the way that we have, there's always that extra level to it that they don't necessarily get. And being part of a group where everyone kind of gets it is really powerful. And and I think that goes for us, and that goes for the players as well. I think you with the internet, you're going to get so much discourse on what everyone else is doing, especially public figures. And I think right now, one of the most toxic things going on is talking about which players didn't make it to the wake and the funeral, and you know, and trying to come up with reasons why they didn't. Everyone is going to have their own reasons to do something or not do something. And so it's just, I don't know, it's kind of frustrating to see that we've so quickly devolved from, hey, let's be there for everyone, to, oh, you know, so and so didn't make it, and then come up with reasons and start to get into arguments about that. It just seems so silly.
It does, and that's like the thing, man. Like you see, when something like this happens, you kind of see on one side the best side of us, right? I was actually pleasantly surprised that overall, when you looked in social media posts and stuff like that, I expected a lot worse, which I don't know what it says about the current society and how I feel about it. But um, there were some people like like saying stupid stuff because it's internet and it's a free for all and all that. But I thought overall I didn't see a lot of stupid comments unless somebody was really like. I highly doubt all the accounts were really active deleting comments and stuff like that because they usually don't care. But and I can understand some of the channels just doing like personal video thing. I feel like if this was just a personal channel, we probably do that. We kind of have like strength in numbers, so we communicate with each other and stuff like that. So I was okay with that. But man, like over the top like videos, like people recording themselves crying. I mean, is that like really your first reaction? You're a lot younger than me. You're in this generation, but I mean, whose first reaction is like, I'm really extremely sad. I'm crying. Let me record myself real quick, kind of a thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm not that much of a content creator to kind of like understand that concept, but there was so much of that shit. There were so many like channels like trying to do compilation videos and stuff like that, try to trot them out there as fast as possible to kind of capitalize on it. And that's like the disgusting part about it. I was like, ugh, really? Like, I know we all deal differently, but capitalizing from it is probably like across the board not the right way to go about it.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of people have problems with Fabrizio for. I think he's had over 100 posts regarding the Jota situation, and he is someone that we've seen before try and get clicks just for the sake of getting clicks. So adding that to the amount of posts about Jota, it just seems shameful. And like you said, it's not worth doing. And it's kind of disgusting to take advantage of the situation in that way.
I mean, the tricky thing is we were talking about it. You actually mentioned it on Discord. I never thought about it in that sense of like giving news. Where does like the news giving responsibility end? Because I don't consider us like we didn't do a lot of it. We didn't do any of it. We kind of like shut down until basically today is probably when you're gonna first see like the social media posts and stuff like that. And but like where do you say like we're not a news channel anyway, so we're not like, oh, this just happened or whatever. But even then, like, do you really need to post every single thing? But where do you draw the line? Because I know you mentioned it. I never saw it as that, like the funeral they're shooting it was supposed to be private, all that kind of stuff. I mean, in one point, I think it was the newspaper saying like the family wanted it private, but then we shot it from the air, kind of a thing. It's like, okay, so talk about not honoring wishes, kind of a deal. Like, where do you draw the line? Where do you personally draw the line? Where you're like, I want this, but anything else is extra.
It's so hard to find the line for
Yeah.
that because then you're really tiptoeing between journalism and then just kind of just aggressive, not journalists but sharks, I guess in a way you could call them.
Yeah.
Where and some of them, that is their literal job, is to go in and take as many pictures as they can of the situation and report on it as much as possible because that's how they're making money through their employer or whatever. So there's that part of it, and it's difficult to find what is fair in that scenario. I think for me specifically, if it's more of just a factual based thing and not something that keeps getting repeated over and over. I think that's sort of where that line ends up being, but I can't sit here and say one or the other because I don't know. I don't have a good answer for the question.
Yeah, I mean that's the weird part. I think I don't believe there's almost any journalism left for the most part, right? Like especially in sports, I just don't think there's any journalism left. I mean, there was a post I was reading the other day. People in Liverpool talking about Liverpool Echo. I mean, it was like a post over here somewhere, but like a lot of the people who were like regularly getting the paper, actual the good old days where you could get the paper, if you will. we're talking about like little Echo and like the website and stuff like that. And I just feel like it's not just Echo, it's like everywhere. Like I don't know a site where every headline is cryptic and stuff like that. I mean, that's not how it used to be. Like you even had, you would have the headline and there was like a sub headline, if you will, telling you what the news is, and then you read it. Now even the headline is all cryptic and stuff like that. So I don't have any faith in journalism. So to me, almost everything now, I'm on the extreme here, but everything seems like over the top because I feel like, it's comes across as just trying to like capitalize on it. So that's what's I don't understand. Spirit of LFC fans, man. Normally, I don't care about your stupid trolling, but get the fuck out of here today. Honestly, I'm not in the mood for your bullshit. So if you're not gonna say anything, comment. I'm just gonna just ban you from the site. Normally, I don't care about your stupid banter and trolling, but today is definitely not the fucking day, dude. If you pick today to come and like troll, you need to get a better life. You need better things in your life. So get the hell out of here. But anywho,
I was going to say, considering the last 4 or 5 days, do you really think that this is going to be the best way to spend your time is going around these channels, especially this channel, doing that kind of shit? It just then that's the thing that when we talk about perspective, right? I think a lot of people need some of that, especially with the recent events. It's just absolutely absurd.
yeah, and I think that's like the weird thing, right? Like everybody takes this differently and handles it differently. Because, like I say, I mean, I know you're like we're very similar in that sense. Where I mean, when I think of loss, it goes to my dad, and I think I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I'm sure you're like pretty darn close in that sense. Where like whenever a loss happens, I kind of go to that, and then the next step is I think we go to ourselves. I mean, at least I do. And you're like, tomorrow is not freaking promised. I mean, this guy was having, I mean, dude, it's like the best summer of his life, probably, right? Like, just won a title, won the Nations Cup, got married. I mean, it would be like the summer of George, like the summer of a lifetime he's having there. And then this happens out of nowhere. So it just kind of like takes you all to that. And I think like how people deal with it afterwards says a lot to me. Like say we kind of reflect on ourselves, the overall events, and then you kind of like think about all that. But how people deal with it afterwards, it's a free for all, and I totally get that. Everybody kind of deals with it differently. I mean, I remember after my dad passed away. I mean the and actually, like the funny thing is, after the Jota thing happened, we were talking with my brother about something. I can't remember what it was, and I just like was dying laughing, and that's what we do. Like that's what we did when my dad passed away too. It was just like kind of like your nerves are all jacked up anyway, but that's how you kind of cope with it, and then you get each other. Like you're both laughing, you get each other. You're somewhere else at the same time while you're laughing at the same time, kind of a deal. So I all get all that, like how people deal with it, but the last way to deal with it is I don't want to say like even mocking it. I didn't see a lot of that, but not taking it seriously and kind of like poo-pooing it. That's kind of like gets on my nerves. I usually can deal with the comments and kind of like ignore the stupidity and kind of troll back, but today is probably not a good day to troll overall.
I was going to say, speaking of lines being crossed when it's in regards to someone's life that was lost, that is a pretty big line to cross. I mean, at least give it a couple months, right? Like let things and that's the weird thing too is we're gonna sit here for the next month and a half before the season starts, and everything is just gonna be weird, and then the season starts and it's gonna still be weird. And I don't know. I was thinking about this morning before we went on air, thinking about the future in this year and how to think about it, and I just don't know how I'm going to feel. It's so weird, and I know I'll sit here and I'll say that as a player, I was probably the most critical of Diogo, like in American Scouser, right?
Yeah.
Mainly just like the last year or so. And I get that. As a player, I was very critical. I was never critical of him as a person. And I think, when everything happened, it really made me kind of sit back and, again, perspective and realize that some of these things that we talk about when we talk about these players, it just isn't worth saying. I'm not going to put any names out there as well, but some of the moral policing that goes around from some people who have joked about players being in car crashes in our own Discord.
Yeah.
And seeing their moral policing is quite ironic. And I'm just like hoping I don't snap at a moment to kind of make that known again. But it does offer a lot of perspective in how we treat our I guess our friends, and how we treat each other when we're talking about other people too. Because I think that is important to remember, that we realize that they are just people. They seem like they're larger than life, right? We look at these athletes as immortal, and then this kind of stuff happens, and we realize that all the stupid shit that we may have said really doesn't matter, because they are a person at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, like a bad pass is a bad pass, or a bad shot, or stupid mistake, or whatever. You kind of have to. I think, yeah, we're gonna criticize it. We're gonna get on it in the sporting kind of way, but wishing ill. I mean, even like somebody like Nunez, I find it hard to wish, unless you've done something like soccer errors or playing bad soccer. I don't think like deserves a punishment in that kind of a sense. Like like you're like, man, get the hell out of here, or sell this guy, or whatever. I can understand that, but anything above that, and yeah, we have seen it on Discord, and yeah, and then yeah, like Sir Z says, be careful what you say, because yeah, it's weird, man. And like, going back to what you're saying, I don't even know when we go back to so-called normal, and there's like a certain guilt about going back to normal, right? I mean, like this weekend, for example, I think Sunday was the first day where I didn't think about it at all, which kind of helps. Which kind of helped, I guess. My escape is like gaming. So there was like a lot of gaming on the PC, gaming on PlayStation. Like throughout the weekend, we probably Angie and I did way too much gaming, if anything. But like that was the escape, and that's why I didn't tell. Like going back to normal, kind of almost like feels a little guilty too. I mean, I remember. I mean, I'll tell the story. I'll probably tell it again tonight. I'll probably tell it a lot over the years, but I remember like when I was managing Menards, and actually right here, like when I had transferred like closer to home, a gentleman, Dave. I mean, I won't say his last name, but I still like remember the older gentleman. He was like, he passed away during his break in his truck in the parking lot, because we would park in the outer boundaries, and he went out, and they were like, hey, he never came back. I was like, what? And then we found out he had like a lot of health issues and stuff, but he passed away in his truck. And I remember like and I was like relatively new. I only knew the dude for like a year or two, and there were a lot of people who worked with him a lot longer. And I remember sitting in the parking lot, just thinking, like just like I say, you kind of reflect on yourself, and like what has happened in the past and all that kind of stuff. And I remember, man, I mean, this is like this is very fucking vivid, but I remember walking back into like my back office, like my office area, and like everything was normal, like people were working just like nothing happened. And I was like, how the hell is this happening? Like, you guys knew this guy. Like, how was like, I'm done over here. How are you guys going? But one, everybody deals with a different way. And sometimes like going back about it is the best way to go about it, I guess. I don't know. Like everybody was kind of, I don't even know if it was like, I'll consume myself with work kind of a thing, but it was more about how people like deal with it, or like, when do you go back to normalcy? I guess I feel guilt about going back to normalcy, but that could just be, how I handle it.
Yeah, because there's a good chance that for some of these players, maybe not all these players, but some of these players, that getting back on the pitch is their best way to be able to go through these feelings and handle it. I personally can't imagine going back into the training room or going back into AXA and kind of thinking back to different memories with him in there. Like thinking about Ibu, going around with him and handing out the FC games, or just going into a dressing room and having his number there, and not changing next to him. Even if you're going back to normal and playing on the pitch is what's going to bring you the most comfort, that moment when you head back into that dressing room, I couldn't wish that upon anyone. I feel like that's we kind of felt a sense of that with. I know a lot of players' posts were very poignant. I know there were a few that particularly broke me, but I think Mo's words were really poignant in the sense of him saying that there aren't many things that could scare him coming back.
Yeah.
And to read him say something like that is really difficult to wrap your head around. And you just really hope that they're able to come back and have the mental fortitude to be able to do it. And I know people will say that this could make them stronger, because it could. But also in some ways it could break some people. It could tear some people apart. You don't know. You hope that everyone's going to grow stronger from this, but you just don't know.
Yeah, AR says, why didn't Klopp attend that? I mean, there were like a couple of questions of like this person, that person, and stuff. I know some of them didn't do it in the sense that they didn't want to take over, like, you know, they didn't want to be the focus of attention, and I kind of get that. Like, I know, like Ronaldo was saying that, and it would be, you know, fairness to him. And I don't know. I feel like certain things are overvalued in society, and can actually mean shit. They could be people over there showing their respects who probably are going to forget about it on their ride home, as they're grabbing something to eat. But there are people who never are there who are going to be thinking about it over and over and over again. So I feel like certain things are probably, like, I find something like that overvalued personally. And because it's impossible for these people to do it in private. I mean, Henderson went there as an ex-captain, and I love Hendo. Even after the way he left and stuff like that. If he didn't, he would probably still be my like favorite player of all time, and probably like even like the favorite captain of all time, because we lived with him than the rest last. Maybe it's the recency bias, but I freaking, like, you know, he couldn't do it in private. There's like 85 cameras and all that kind of stuff, phones. I mean, now everybody's a moving camera anyway, with their phones and stuff like that. So you can't do it in private. So I can understand why people would not want to do something so public and rather do it in private or like personal. So I don't put any blame to that. I mean, here's the thing, going back to what you're saying in terms of like going back to normalcy for some of these players. I know my dad passed away. I did not want to, well, I never want to go back to class, I guess, but I did not want to go back to class. I wanted to go back to normalcy, right? But I did not want to go to class, like, because I feel like people say, for example, they watch TV to get their minds off. I can't, because I can watch TV and think other shit at the same time. But that's why, like, gaming is my thing. I had to be in something where I shut off everything else. That's all I'm thinking, kind of a deal. So soccer was that for me. Like, I wanted to be on the pitch. I wanted to practice because I wanted to, you know, I want to be with the guys and I want to play, because when I played, I couldn't think of anything else and stuff. In some ways, I know what Mo is saying. It's very difficult to come back because it's going to bring everything, you know, like everywhere you look, kind of a deal, is going to be a memory. But in some ways, this is these guys' normalcy. And not to mention, the team is their family. They spend more time with the team than they do with their actual family throughout the season. So do you almost feel like, I know he's saying, like, you know, he kind of dreads going back, but do you think at the same time they're almost like looking forward to going back now, because that will bring some normalcy? As much as they're probably saying, man, life is precious, got to spend time with the family while I can. It's a very torn ordeal.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, there is no other option, though, right? I mean, they have to go back to work, so to speak. They have to go and do what they're paid to do. You know, otherwise, what are they going to do, right? I think what's going to be very difficult is, I think, because I was reading some stuff about the players that are at the club, and you know, it's still being a business at the end of the day. And, you know, with a back and forth about, well, I don't think any other player is going to get sold this year, so that you know, so that the chemistry, everyone's together. And then the other side of it, well, you know, if you're going to just refresh, you just kind of rip the Band-Aid off and kind of refresh that way. And so it's going to be very difficult to sit here and predict what's going to happen. But I think what Gally mentioned it with a comment earlier that you put on the screen, that in about a week's time or whatnot, we'll go back to talking about transfers as if it's just another day, and that's part of the footballing world. It's part of the sporting world. It's part of life, like you said. When my dad passed away, I was a freshman in high school. I was away from class or away from school for a week and a half, 2 weeks, I think it was, because it was right around winter break. And I went back and just resumed class as normal. And in the meantime, like you, I was gaming a lot then. Didn't do much outside of that. And you kind of just get back into the pattern. And I think that's ultimately what's going to happen with fans, with the team, with the players, obviously their families. It's going to take a longer time to find a new pattern, to find a new routine. But I think there is so much support for their families that hopefully there is at least a way to ease it a little bit. Granted, you're never going to replace someone, but having a lot of support is immense.
Yeah, that's the tricky part. Like, I know what Gally's saying. Like, he was saying in the comments that the pitch will probably the sanctuary, but things like the canteen and coffee shop. I almost think I think that changes from person to person. This is what makes it so tricky because everybody's going to respond differently. But I feel like it goes back to my brother and I just cracking up on probably really stupid stuff. I mean, we're laughing our ass off to Edward Scissorhands, so that tells you everything you need to know with the state of mind. Where we were just freaking dying, like literally in tears, laughing. But I think when you do that, even the coffee house and stuff, like you go back to it doesn't mean because you're laughing and you're having fun together, you kind of like disrespecting it. It's almost like in the back of the minds of everybody. But I think when you have, it's almost like a support system. I mean, we weren't all crying on Discord, but it helped us grieve in some ways, just like bouncing things back and forth and saying things. Maybe somebody occasionally is saying something funny or whatever, but like I think that's what it is. Like, you kind of get into your comfort zone so that you kind of like protect it against outside things. And eventually, I mean, I have to say, kind of like what you're saying, it is a business and it will go back to normalcy. AR is saying, like, when will they announce gay? I almost felt like, probably like we won't have anything early this week. There'll be a lot of more because the club has not officially announced what they're going to do yet and stuff like that as well. Like, obviously there's a lot of like thoughts about it, but they haven't really announced. I would think that would be the first order of business, like figuring out something and stuff like that, and then going back to signings. It's just kind of like a weird situation. Do you think it affects decision making in that sense? Like you were talking about, like selling players and stuff like that, because I don't think so.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what their plans were with him to begin with. Because I know there were rumors out there of the price that they were looking for. If there was a team that came in and offered, I think it was 40 to 45 for Diogo, that they were willing to accept the offer. So they may have already been at peace with not having him part of the roster next year. It's just now it's more difficult and a more emotional way to go about replacing him. Because I don't think a defensive signing is going to have an emotional response for the club, but the signing of a striker, the signing of an attacker is going to be a very emotional thing. And it's going to be a hard one to navigate how to celebrate a signing knowing he's replacing what he's replacing. And it's not like he's replacing someone that was sold. So I think that's going to be the difficult part, is when that happens, is how they go about doing that. But to your point, to your question about what the plans were, I guess from a business standpoint, it doesn't change a whole lot because they probably already had their targets. They knew kind of what role each player was going to have, or which player Arne wanted to have a role in. And so that was going to impact their decision making more so. I just think that the difficult thing is, if part of the contingency plan was to keep Diogo for the year and have him as the option, that is now another piece that you have to think about that you maybe didn't think about before. So that's the hard part, is not knowing, is understanding what they're going to do that way. But I think as far as the outgoings, what they had before, I don't think it's going to change. It's going to change that because they have to compete this year on a footballing level, and they were going to have to make the changes to do that. So
I almost feel like, and they were asking some of the players, and I think I put a lot more value into that when they talk to ex-players and how they think, like the team will respond and the players and stuff like that. And it almost felt like everybody, for the most part, was saying that it would be something actually that makes it more of a team. It would almost be a motivator in some ways. And I know it sounds cliche and cheesy to say like, win one for him kind of a deal, but I think it would be something that, definitely is gonna something that brings these guys together. I know there's a lot of new names coming in, and that might almost be like a semi good distraction in some way, because there's gonna be some guys that are kind of like respectful for the other one, but probably don't have ties to Jota and stuff like that. But so the Preston game is postponed. I mean, like they say, a lot will probably change. Air is asking about like what's gonna happen to a bunch of players. I don't know, man. I still feel like I find it very hard to still sit down and say, so these could be some like really depressing shows rest of the week too, because I don't know when I'll be able to say, okay, here's what we're gonna do with the front line now, because it goes back to what you're saying. We're always going to think this is not going to go away for some time, like definitely not this season, because everything will be kind of like reminding us of them. There'll be like a different things happening, but definitely in the summer, every move we do, I mean, we talked about it. Heck, that's why I know, thanks to Gally and John and stuff, by the way, because like I say, I ended up sleeping in for once. But we kind of like deleted some of the content that we released recently that was regarding Jota, good or bad. I don't think that anything was bad necessarily, but it was still insensitive for me to say, oh, I don't mind him coming off the bench as a goal scorer and stuff like that. So it's, but we're going to constantly think about that stuff. And that's yeah, it's kind of like puts a damper on every probably conversation, like you're saying. Even if you sign a striker, I don't know how much excitement there's going to be to it, knowing what we're going to do. Jamie says the amount of people clickbaiting in media in general isn't surprising, but nonetheless, yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I say, man, it was a lot of conversations, and I give a lot of credit to everybody really, because I might have, like, if there were more people saying like, no, we should go on air and talk about it, I probably could have been swayed that way too. But everybody kind of, and that's what I kind of like about what we have here, because obviously the fan channel is different, but we were talking about in our YouTube server about like how to go about it, and it was good to have everybody throw in their thoughts, because I think that kind of like helped mold what we did at the end, as opposed to, we didn't do like one thing that somebody said, but I think everybody's thoughts thrown in basically came up with the best way to go about it.
Yeah, and I respected the way that we went about it. And again, if there was another way we went about it, I think I'd also respect that, because ultimately it was down to us as a channel to find the best way to go about it. And I will say there were some channels that did something right away that worked, I guess, worked for lack of a better word, that wasn't too terrible. I mean, because I don't watch too much Liverpool content creator content, that was redundant, because I just, I have the Discord, I have the team, like I already consume so much of it. I don't always need a ton of voices about Liverpool from other people as well. But the couple people that I do watch sometimes, I think had just really classy, poignant reactions to, or not react, but videos about the situation, that were very much just, hey, these are my thoughts right now.
Yeah.
And I'm not also trying to sell you something, or like you can click on this to also do this or that. And so that was respected. But I think, yeah, I think we went about it in a way that represents us as well.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a problem with some of the channels that are personal channels coming out, and like like whether it's Goldbridge or like Alice, whoever, like coming out, a lot of the Liverpool channels like coming out and making like a like a 5 to 10 minute video talking about, like how they felt and stuff like that. And I thought that was fine. A lot of them were done well. None of them were like really, those I thought were well done, because they had some perspective. And I think it was the channels that were doing it that kind of disgusted me are the ones that are usually the smaller channels trying to make this a stepping stone. And I think that's what makes it even more disgusting. And I think like the channels that are established were more of like a personal take, and it wasn't about, getting the clicks or anything, like the views or anything, because they normally get it, right? I mean, they would get the same number of clicks if, somebody else was sold or whatever. So those I could deal with. The ones I couldn't deal with are like smaller channels making this all about themselves and trying to use it as a stepping stone, because it just was not one. It's not. Is it really worth it? Are you going to be able to live with yourself? But people live with a lot of things, so there's also that. Moment like this shows like meaningless sport has so much meaning, and that's the thing. Yeah, it's kind of like weird, but in like, I'll ask you that, because these are like, man, like it's been like a heavy thought. I've been probably like crabby at home too, I'm assuming. Angie will probably do a personal video on that and tell you everybody. But like, you think about a lot of things, because in some ways you think about, I mean, one thing that popped in my head is, I mean, we're sitting down over here talking about Liverpool. Is it really that important? Right? Like, we're talking about the Premier League, like celebrating this, getting mad at that and stuff like that. But in the same sentence, then we have this Discord thing that helps us deal with something like this, plus gets everybody together. So you kind of have to like still love that part of it. And that's probably the part that I love about it is, it's a community wrapped around the passion. It might not mean much to a guy who follows the stupid baseball team over here or something, but he's probably the reverse. He's saying the same thing about us, but maybe in the grand scheme of life or whatever, it's not all that important. It's a business that we're like following with a passion, but it does create this, and that's kind of extremely valuable.
I think it was Lawrence McKenna that said that football is the most important thing out of everything that's not important, right? And I think that was a really I like that way of looking at it, because the important things in life, right? We're gonna have ourselves, we're gonna have our family, we're gonna have our friends, we're gonna have the livelihood of us as people and who we connect with, and because those are the really important things. And then you have your list of all the stuff that you enjoy that you could live without if you didn't need to have it. But this team, this club, this sport, it ranks number one for most of us in that respect. So while it isn't the most important thing in the world every day, it is the most important thing of the unimportant things. And I think that's how after I heard that, I think that's just going to be my favorite way of talking about sport in general, especially when it's someone that it doesn't really understand it. It's like, you don't have to understand it. It's one of those things. It's just the most important thing in my life out of things that are unimportant, and that's it.
Yeah, that's fair, I guess. Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it, actually. I didn't think about that. Damn it, where were you this weekend? We'll put the shit on Discord, damn it. so we can all share. Yeah, the people selling t-shirts and stuff, like scarves and stuff, I was like, really, but and people buy. I don't know which one is worse, people selling or people buying. As you're buying it, what you're doing.
No, I think people who are buying it have more genuine intentions of why they're buying it, kind of
Probably.
as an ordinary thing.
It's you gotta know better, right? You gotta know better in this world. I know you can be naive, but you gotta know better. Or like if it was from the club or something like that, even if the club is not doing it, if the club did it right away, for example, I would take offense to it and be like, "Are you freaking serious?" Right?
Yeah.
But not like if they're not doing it, all these other small, businesses, blah blah, like just popping up for nothing out of your Facebook feed and stuff like that. I don't know, like when you buy from that, that's beyond being naive, isn't it? I'm not saying you're as guilty, but you gotta be. Don't feed the trolls.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are so many people in this world, and
I know where this is going. Okay.
So many people that sometimes just don't have the mental capacity to understand that part of it. And there are a lot of people who like to be the first, There are a lot of people who are ordering these things just to get them in, to take pictures with them and post them online, talking about, this and that. So I think there's that element to it, unfortunately. I can probably think of a few people in our Facebook groups that I could potentially see doing that as well, unfortunately. And it's just something,
I know where this is going.
And it's just something that we have to look, because everything is just too easy nowadays. You can make a t-shirt within 2 seconds. You can film a podcast like this. You can film a channel like this without much equipment, right? I mean, everything is just too easy. And I think that just desensitizes everything else, because everything is so quick and so simple and so easy. And it's just this instant thing. And I think we just forget sometimes that life is also very instant, and we need to take a step back and appreciate that. And I think kind of going back to what you were saying earlier about or just in general about perspective. And I think it was Thursday evening when I came back after work, because that was a rough day. I needed to go to Chicago to pick something up for work, and the traffic, it usually takes like an hour and a half, and it took 3 hours to drive in, 3.5 hours to drive back. Practically my entire work day was just spent.
A lot of thinking time, but because I know commuting is nothing but thinking. So yeah.
Yes. And that, plus the store uses my Spotify. So I wasn't using Spotify in my car. It was just silent. And for 6.5 hours, I was just in my thoughts. And then I got back to work, did what I needed to do, came back home. And Michelle and I had been debating going on a trip in the fall, because with the new house, with all of this, we were like, is this a good idea? Maybe we should hold off. And I think, had a couple of glasses of wine. But then at that point I was like, let's just book the fucking tickets, right? Because I thought about Diogo. I thought about one of my mom and stepdad's close friends also passed away last week. And I just thought about why wait? If we're thinking about doing this because of, I understand money sometimes can be a bit tight, but in a couple of years or so, we're not going to be worrying about the couple extra $100 or whatever it might have been. We're going to be happy that we went, regardless. So, and that's it. You just take advantage of what you can while you're here.
Yeah, I mean, dude, this is funny, because we literally were talking about, because we're gonna, when we do the podcast in New York, we were thinking of like driving, and I was like, well, if we drive, maybe we were talking about maybe like going to Niagara Falls, because instead of going 12, you do 8 kind of a deal. And we're like, do we do it? Do we not do it? And then, we were gonna do it anyway, I think. But yeah, it just reinforces that you sometimes got to stop long-term planning, man. Like as an older guy, I can tell you, yeah, you gotta kind of like at times stop the long-term freaking planning, or stressing too much about. And I say this, I'm the worst at it, by the way. I'm the biggest planner and worrier. I mean, worry as a lifestyle. Everybody who follows the channel knows. But yeah, you gotta sometimes stop worrying about the freaking long-term and just take care of the short-term, because there's no guarantee that all the shit you're worrying about is even you're gonna last enough to see all that shit in the first place. So I know you're gonna get your feed now that I say retirement on air, and you listen to it. You're gonna get nothing but freaking retirement stuff, and that's all good and dandy to plan for the future. But man, at the same time, you gotta live today. You gotta take that trip. You gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta call that person. You gotta say what you gotta say and all that kind of stuff, because you do not know if tomorrow is gonna be there for you to say it. So you have to kind of do it. Real truth is here. Yeah, I mean, it is. And I think that's like what makes it so freaking horrific, man, because it's the very, very high to go into the extreme disaster, right? Like, I don't think it would make it any better or easier if, he lost the Nations Cup or something like that, but you just see this, like, the age and everything too. Like I say, when I look at that, I'm not, those kids have, like, he has 3 little ones with no dad. I mean, it has to be the wife. I can imagine being the dad losing 2 of your sons to something like this, from probably thinking, you're on top of the world and stuff like that. It is just like horrific. Yeah, it's going to be really difficult to make anything entertaining this week. So we'll try to keep talking and kind of hopefully make each other laugh here and there and forget it. But that's really about to do. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. And here's the thing. Like, I know when somebody's got. I mean, you'll even say nice stuff about me probably if something happens to me, Matush. So I know that, but it does sound like and that's one thing I really like about this team and admire about this team. It's a lot of like good guys overall, and nobody's perfect. Obviously, the bad stuff doesn't come out when you go. Like I say, you'll even talk highly of me when I go, but it's just still like all the stuff you hear about him. I think people's reactions tell the most about somebody when something like that happens to them.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think part of what, again, just echoing what everyone is saying, just it's truly heartbreaking to see how many people he impacted, just beyond a sporting level, because we're gonna have moments that we remember athletes for, but even something as silly as the gaming community. I mean, not I don't want to say silly, but silly in the sense of, again, one of the most important unimportant things, gaming. Yeah. He had such an impact on the FIFA and the FC community. There were so many posts about FIFA and FC players talking about playing with Diogo, or being able to be in tournaments with him and this and that. And even the impact that he had on people like that extended beyond any of the things that he did on the field. And of course, then all of the friendships that he had built through Wolves, through the Portuguese national team, through Liverpool. I think, Queeve and Rabo talking about him being the most English Portuguese player ever, and talking about those things. It's just so difficult to understand how much he really had an impact on everyone around him, and it's going to be felt for a very long time.
Steve says, Tim, I have zero expectation or desires for this upcoming season. Don't matter if we win the trophy or not. I'm a little torn on this. I really don't know. Maybe it's too soon. Got to give me some time to kind of think about that. I don't know. In some ways, I think in the grand scheme of things, we were talking about that. There's a lot of other things more important than winning and stuff. But I don't know if it's like changing how I look at the season for the team, because I almost want them to do well, if nothing else, is a distraction. Does that make sense? Because I feel like, look, you get on the pitch and stuff, right, to forget about things. And if it goes bad there, it's almost like now you got two negatives in your life. You were already using the thing that you were using as an escape, if it's bringing you more stress. So I think for the sake of the team, more than us celebrating a trophy, I want them to do well, be in the race, win something, so that they have something else to kind of gather around, as opposed to saying this was the only escape and now this sucks kind of a deal.
I think that's an absolutely fair point, because when you start having, we've seen rough stretches that this team has had, whether it was last year for a little bit or whether it was under Klopp a few times, like having those rough periods of 4 or 5 weeks, and how tumultuous that can be within the fan base and then within the team. And then all these reports coming out about who's unhappy here, who's unhappy there. This person didn't smile after a goal, blah, blah, blah. Like, when you start adding all of that on top of the emotional stress of already dealing with something that you will have a physical reminder of every time you go out on the field, every time you go into the dressing room, like that's the kind of stuff that can really break you as a person. Because again, they are just people at the end of the day, and you can think about how much stress they're already under, how much pressure they're already under in a season, and then you add to that the potential emotional turmoil of that. For their sake, like you're saying, yeah, I think at least being competitive will keep their minds off of it, because once if they have a rough season, and talking like mid-table kind of thing, you can probably unfortunately start predicting where the cracks are going to be, and kind of seeing how they all react, and not having a good time watching that.
So is it fair to say, too probably early to take the crystal ball out, but it will either be really good season or it could be pretty ugly?
Like a no in between thing?
Yeah. because like you say, if you're out of the race, God forbid, earlier in the season or something like that, that's when I think your mind, your mind goes to other things a lot easier, and takes away from your your concentration. And we know, like, the margins are very, very small in a league like the Premier League, where if the team is even a 5% down for one reason or another, and especially something like this where it's more psychological. But I mean, at the same time, like I said, I go back to having a lot of new players, maybe kind of like helping the other guys kind of get like re-energized and like kind of shake it off too. But I just feel like if it is not going well, everything else will start piling on a lot easier. I know it would have been for me, and I know these guys are professionals, but still, they're human, like you said.
Yeah, I don't have much to add on to that point because I think that's absolutely fair. And so, yeah, I hope for the best for everyone's sake, just mentally and physically.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And I don't know. It's almost like I don't want to put that pressure on the guys because I don't think that's fair either. Like, if you guys want to honor Jota, you better win, kind of a thing, because that's, adding unnecessary pressure and probably unfair pressure to the guys. But I think it's something for them to rally around. Having that will kind of like have them cope with it. I mean, like I say, we're having a difficult time. We don't even know him personally. And like I say, part of what I know personally, at least, I don't know about you, but like, the reason I'm having such a difficult time is, one, like the guy himself and everything around him. And then, like I say, you kind of like look at it as like it hits me like all kinds of different ways. Like, and I wrote that on Discord too. Like, as a dad, it really hits me. Like, somebody lost two sons. As somebody who's lost his dad, it really hits me, right? Like, because you can kind of like see the pain and stuff like that. And there's like three kids there who lost their like dad really, really early, even a lot earlier than you and I did, for example. So I go to that, and then you take that and you're like, hey, this guy was on top of the world and it can end like this. So you kind of reflect that. So I think half of my, I don't want to say devastation, but like, ugh, like as you look at the whole thing, was main like a lot of other factors as well. So I don't know how these guys would deal with that or how that would affect them, because they know him personally on top of it. Like you said, like they were changing next to him, they were sitting next to him, they were hanging out next to him, they were apparently Bradley was playing FIFA with him, getting his ass kicked. I saw that on his Instagram post and stuff like that. So like there's like a lot more like personal connections they have on top of everything we have.
Yeah, and I think with where the club want to be from a business standpoint, they're going to want to compete. They're not going to be able to, I don't want to say afford to take their foot off.
Yeah.
But you've seen what can happen to clubs that don't perform and spend a lot of money, like Manchester United, right? I mean, they're firing staff workers left and right because they can't afford to pay them here and there, while they're still spending huge money on these players and paying these big contracts. And so from a business standpoint, they're not going to want to take the foot off the gas. They don't want to necessarily afford to have to take the foot off the gas. And you just hope that, I think the weird thing for me, one of the many weird things too, is I just started coaching basketball again. I did a little coaching like 7-8 years ago, and I went back into it this summer. And when Arne's comments came out, I kind of put myself in the situation of being a coach in that moment, and like, would I be strong enough to be able to rally that team back, and how do I go about that? And that was a really difficult thing for me to go through. Like I knew the kids for like a month, but if I'd heard that one of the kids had been seriously hurt or something even more tragic happened, I would be so shaken up. I can't even imagine having to work with someone day in and day out for over a year like he did, and then have to then rally all the other guys around that as well. So that part of it too, I do not envy Arne's position here. I think it's going to be very, very telling on what kind of person and player manager he is based on what happens in the next 3-4 years, based on the personalities and the behaviors of everyone.
Steve says my stance is that I'm okay with whatever the outcome of the season is, not expecting the last one. Yeah, I don't think it's fair. I agree with that. I mean, I don't think it's fair to put that pressure on them to win and expect them to win. That's probably not fair at all. But like I say, my point in like wanting to do well is, I mean, aside from obviously our personal, selfishness, the fact that I think it will really help the team to do better as opposed to kind of like struggle through it. Real Truth says I've seen some interviews with ex-player managers. Yeah, I think it really goes to some can't really accept it and others can. It's 50-50. And that's when I think a group helps. Like, because, that's why Discord helped us this weekend. I think we all handle it differently, but we were able to, um, be able to kind of cope with it together, even though it's different. When you're together, it kind of works differently. And yeah, you're now gone for goods, buddy. Spirit of LFC fans, you're done, man. I'm done with you. But yeah, I think that's why I'm hoping the team will, like, the guy who can't really cope with it as easier as the guy next to him. The guy next to him will help him get there, or whatever the case might be. Kind of like a strength in numbers. What happened this weekend with Discord, which I'm really thankful. Again, I would have never thought. That's another thing I was thinking this weekend, like 7-8 years ago when I first started this thing. I would have never thought it would get here. I thought it was meant to be like 5-10 people hanging out kind of a thing. So it was really cool to see that this weekend. Any parting thoughts? I'll be back tonight. Talk to Bickler and Galley. I would think it would be pretty similar, but I would, we'll get those guys' takes and see what they did, how they went about it. Bickler has really distracted me, so I'll like to thank him with investing in this equipment that we're going to take to New York, because there's way too many buttons on this damn thing. So if anybody knows about sound, hit me up, by the way. But go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll let you do the parting thoughts.
Not too many. Obviously, just we've touched on everything that we have in the show of just be present in who you are and who you're around. I think it's a big thing for me. I think the big, like a personal memory for me. I know I probably shared it with some people. 5 years ago, I went to go visit my best friend in Des Moines. And I had never been to their pub there for a game, and so I convinced a bunch of our friends to go and watch, the greatest team ever. And we went to go watch, and we lost 7-2 to Villa. That was the day that they got absolutely thumped, and they're looking around at me like, "Hey, this is the greatest team in the world." And I was like, "Yes,
this Villa team is really good."
Yeah. But during that time, they were having a raffle for prizes, and I think I bought 5 tickets, and I said, I'm not even going to be here. I'm just visiting. They're like, that's fine. You can still win it. And so I bought 5 tickets, and then a couple weeks later, I was having a picnic with Michelle in Evanston, like near the Northwestern campus, and a Zoom link for the raffle going on, and they called one of my numbers, and I was like, oh, holy shit, I just won. And it was the Never Give Up t-shirt that, not the one that Mo wore, but it was the Never Give Up t-shirt that they were giving out. And I was like, that's super cool. Like, cool. I mean, this was worth it then, the $10 or whatever. And then they went and they called a couple more numbers, because they did, I think there were 7 or 8 prizes. And the last prize was a kit of your choice. And when they got to the last number, they called another one of my numbers. And I was in complete shock because I had never won stuff like that before, and it was really cool. And I decided on that teal swooshy kit from 2020.
I like that one. I have that. Yes.
And I decided to put Jota's name on the back of that one. And I really appreciate having that memory now of being in that moment and then being able to get that kit and then having that story forever. So it's just, it is a great thing.
Yeah, man. Like I say, it won't get a lot easier. Steve says it does help him cope, and I mean, that's great to hear, and that's why if you're not on Discord, Steve, do join us there as well because we do a lot more of these. But yeah, we'll probably kind of like have to do this throughout the way. I think every conversation is gonna drag us back here, sadly. But yeah, I'll be back on tonight. We'll talk with the boys. Thanks a lot, Matush. Yeah, I mean, like I say, these conversations help, man. It definitely doesn't hurt. But yeah, I threw earlier in the chats the link for the Discord. So if anybody wants to hit the like and all that kind of stuff, I'm too tired to say all that stuff. But yeah, we'll see you guys tonight. I'll be on air 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern with the boys. And we'll see you guys then. Have a good rest of your Monday and see you guys tonight.